Hello, English learners. I'm Emma, your host for today. If you're new here, I'd love to tell you that on this channel, we upload English learning videos every single day, all designed to help you improve your fluency, your confidence, and your real-life communication skills a little faster and a little more naturally. In today's masterclass, you're going to do much more than just listen. You're going to think in English, speak in English, and slowly train your mind to understand conversations at a deeper level, because today's lesson is a complete B1 to B2 level, slow English conversations practice session where we'll build your vocabulary step by step while exploring everyday life situations that you can actually use outside the classroom. Throughout this session, we'll move through natural conversations, daily routines, real-life decisions, emotions, plans, opinions, and social interactions. And as we do that, I'll guide you through useful phrases, conversational structures, and intermediate to advanced vocabulary that will help you express yourself more clearly and more confidently. You won't just hear English, you'll experience how it flows, how it connects, and how it lives in real communication. Whether you're trying to explain your thoughts, respond in conversations, describe your experiences, or simply feel more comfortable speaking with others, this practice will help you stretch your English from the B1 level toward a stronger, more expressive B2 level, and along the way, I'll share speaking prompts and reflection moments so you can actively practice, not just passively listen. Before we begin, make sure you subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you never miss a daily English practice session like this one, because consistent listening and consistent speaking practice is one of the fastest ways to grow your fluency. So now, take a comfortable seat, relax your mind, keep your focus with my voice, and if you'd like, you can grab a pen and notebook to write down new words and phrases that you hear. Let's begin our Slow English Conversations Masterclass together. There's something interesting that happens when you move from intermediate English toward an upper intermediate level. It's not just about learning more words, and it's not only about understanding longer sentences. It's about comfort, the comfort of staying in a conversation without feeling lost, the comfort of expressing your thoughts without translating every idea from your native language, and the comfort of responding naturally when someone speaks to you unexpectedly. At the B1 level, most learners can talk about daily routines, simple experiences, and familiar topics. You can describe your morning, your work, your plans, and your hobbies. But when conversations become slightly deeper, when emotions become more complex, or when opinions are required, many learners begin to slow down, not because they don't have ideas, but because they don't yet have the language tools to express those ideas smoothly. So today, we're going to slowly build that bridge together through conversations, reflections, and guided speaking moments. You'll begin expanding simple English into richer, more expressive communication. And as you listen, I want you to imagine that you're not just hearing me speak, you're participating with me, thinking your own responses, forming your own sentences, and gradually strengthening your conversational instincts. Let's begin with a familiar daily life moment. Imagine it's early morning, your alarm rings, and for a few seconds, you're deciding whether to get up or stay in bed a little longer. This tiny moment, so simple, is actually full of conversational potential because it connects to feelings, habits, responsibilities, and choices. You might say, I usually wake up at 7, but today I felt too tired to get out of bed immediately. Notice how that sentence moves beyond a basic routine. It introduces contrast, usually versus today, and it adds emotional vocabulary. Too tired. Now let's stretch that idea further. You could say, I've been trying to fix my sleep schedule recently, so even when I feel tired, I push myself to wake up on time. Here, you're adding time context, effort, and personal motivation, which are key features of B2 level expression. Take a moment now. Think about your own morning. Try to describe it in more than one layer. Not just what you do, but how you feel and why you do it. You might say, I start my morning slowly because I like to feel calm before the day becomes busy. Or, my mornings are usually rushed since I have to prepare for work quickly. Do you see the difference between stating facts and expressing experiences? That difference is where fluency begins to grow. Let's move deeper into the same morning scene. Imagine you're having breakfast, maybe alone, or maybe with family. Conversations during breakfast are often simple, but they carry emotional tone, connection, and daily planning. You might say, I don't usually feel very hungry in the morning, but I still try to eat something light. This shows habit, preference, and health awareness. Or perhaps, breakfast is the only time when my whole family sits together, so I really value that time. Now you're expressing emotional significance, not just routine. Take a breath. Try forming your own sentence about breakfast. Expand it. Add feeling. Add reasoning. For example, I enjoy drinking coffee in silence because it helps me mentally prepare for the day. This kind of reflective speaking is what pushes you toward advanced conversational comfort, because real conversations are rarely about actions alone. They're about thoughts, reactions, and perspectives. Now imagine you've finished breakfast and you're getting ready to leave home. Maybe you're preparing for work, college, or errands. This transition moment, leaving home, often includes planning language. You might say, before leaving, I always double-check if I have my phone, wallet, and keys. A simple sentence, but structured clearly. Let's expand it. I've developed a habit of checking my essentials before leaving because I once forgot my wallet and had a really stressful day. Now you've added past experience, consequence, and personal learning. Try building your own version. You could say, I prefer leaving early so I don't have to rush or deal with traffic stress. Or, I usually leave at the last minute, which makes my mornings more chaotic than I'd like. Notice how these sentences don't require difficult grammar, but they require awareness of how to express lifestyle patterns, which is central to B2 conversation. Now let's step outside. You're on your way somewhere, maybe walking, maybe commuting. Travel time is one of the richest conversational topics because it combines observation, emotion, and opinion. You might say, my commute is usually quiet, and I use that time to listen to music or podcasts. Or, traffic in the morning drains my energy before the day even begins. That sentence expresses emotional impact, not just description. Take a moment. describe your travel experience in two layers. First, describe the action, then describe the feeling. For example, I take the bus to work every day, and sometimes it feels exhausting because it's always crowded. This layering technique, action plus emotion, is one of the fastest ways to sound more fluent in English conversations. As the day begins, conversations shift toward responsibilities, tasks, and interactions. Imagine arriving at work or college. Someone asks you, "How's your day starting so far?" A basic B1 reply might be, "It's good, I'm just busy." But a stronger B2 response could be, "It's been productive so far. I had a few tasks waiting for me, so I started working on them right away." Do you feel the difference? One answers the question, the other continues the conversation. Now, try your own variation. My day started a bit stressful, but it's getting better as I organize my work. This is conversational expansion, and it keeps dialogue flowing naturally. Let's pause here for a guided speaking reflection. Think about how your typical weekday begins. Try describing it step by step, but with emotional and reflective language included. Speak slowly and allow yourself time to think in English. You might say, "My weekdays usually begin quietly, but once I start checking my messages, everything becomes fast-paced." Or, "I enjoy the early part of my day the most because it feels calm before responsibilities take over." By practicing this kind of layered narration, you're training your mind to move beyond survival English into expressive English. Now imagine it's midday. You've been working or studying for hours. Conversations during this time often revolve around energy levels, productivity, and mental focus. You might say, "I tend to lose focus after lunchtime, so I try to take short breaks." Or, "I feel most productive in the afternoon when I'm fully awake and mentally active." Let's stretch that further. "I've noticed that my productivity depends a lot on my sleep. When I rest well, I perform better." Here, you're connecting cause and effect, which is a hallmark of upper intermediate communication. Take a moment now. Reflect on your own productivity patterns. Try forming a sentence that explains when and why you feel most productive. Maybe, "I work best under pressure because deadlines push me to concentrate." Or, "I prefer working slowly but consistently rather than rushing tasks." These kinds of personal insights make conversations richer, more engaging, and more human. As the day continues, interactions become more social. You might speak with coworkers, classmates, or friends. Imagine someone asking, "How do you usually handle stress during the day?" A simple answer might be, "I just deal with it." But an expanded response could be, "I try to manage stress by prioritizing tasks and reminding myself not to overthink small problems." Or, "When I feel overwhelmed, I step away for a few minutes to reset my mind." Let's pause again for practice. Think about your stress management habits. Try expressing not just what you do, but why it helps you. For example, "Talking to someone I trust helps me release mental pressure." This reflective communication style is what transforms everyday English into meaningful conversation. And this is exactly how we'll continue progressing, slowly, naturally, and conversationally, building your vocabulary, strengthening your sentence flow, and expanding your confidence step by step as we move deeper into real-life English interaction. As the day moves forward, conversations often begin to shift from personal routines into shared experiences, especially the small interactions that happen naturally around you. These are the moments where English becomes less rehearsed and more spontaneous, and this is exactly where B1 learners begin stretching toward B2 fluency. Imagine it's mid-afternoon. You've been working, studying, or handling responsibilities for several hours, and you run into a colleague, a classmate, or even a neighbor. They ask you a very simple question: "How's everything going today?" Now, this question sounds easy, but it opens the door to layered communication because it's not only about information, it's about tone, mood, and conversational continuation. You might respond at a basic level: "Everything's fine, just a normal day." And that's perfectly correct. But let's expand it slightly. You could say, "It's been a bit busy, but I feel satisfied with what I've completed so far." Notice how that answer introduces emotional reflection, not just factual reporting. Or perhaps, "It started off stressful, but things have slowed down now, so I'm feeling more relaxed." Here, you're describing emotional transition, which adds conversational depth. Take a moment now and imagine someone asking you that same question. Try forming a response that includes both activity and feeling. You might say, "I've had a productive day, but I'm definitely looking forward to some rest later." This kind of balanced expression is very natural in English conversations. Now let's imagine the interaction continues. The person asks, "What are you working on these days?" This question moves from daily routine into ongoing life focus. A simple answer might be, "I'm working on a project." But we can stretch it. "I'm currently working on a project that requires a lot of research, so I've been spending extra hours studying lately." Or, "I've been focusing on improving my skills recently, especially in communication and time management." Do you see how these responses reveal more personality? They invite deeper conversation. Now pause and think about what you're focusing on in your life right now. It could be studies, career growth, language learning, health, or personal development. Try describing it with detail. For example, "I've been dedicating more time to improving my English because I want to communicate more confidently in professional situations." That sentence reflects purpose, motivation, and direction, all important elements of B2 expression. Let's move the scene slightly forward. It's late afternoon now, and your energy may be changing. Many conversations at this time revolve around tiredness, workload, and anticipation of the evening. Someone might say, "You look tired today? Long day?" You could answer, "Yeah, it's been exhausting." But let's expand that response into something more descriptive. "Yes, it's been quite demanding. I had multiple responsibilities to handle at once, so it drained my energy." Or, "I didn't sleep well last night, so I've been feeling low on energy throughout the day." Now you're connecting physical state with reasoning. Take a breath and try forming your own variation. "I feel mentally tired more than physically tired because I've been making a lot of decisions today." This kind of distinction, mental versus physical fatigue, shows advanced conversational awareness. Now let's transition into another daily life conversational space: decision-making. Imagine discussing evening plans with a friend or colleague. They ask, "Do you have anything planned after work?" A simple reply: "No, Nothing special, but we can stretch it naturally. I was thinking about going out for a short walk, just to clear my mind after the day. Or, I might meet a friend for coffee. It depends on how tired I feel later. Notice how English often uses soft planning language, thinking about, might, depends. This reflects flexibility and conversational politeness. Now it's your turn. Think about your typical evening plans. You could say, I usually prefer quiet evenings because they help me recharge mentally. Or, my evenings are often social. I enjoy spending time with friends whenever possible. Both responses express lifestyle identity, not just plans. As the evening begins, conversations often become more reflective. People start talking about how their day felt overall. Imagine someone asking, So, how would you describe your day in one word? You might say, productive. But let's expand the reflection. I'd describe it as productive, because even though it was tiring, I accomplished what I planned. Or, I'd say it was emotionally challenging, but I learned a lot from it. This kind of reflective language signals strong conversational maturity. Now pause and try answering that question for yourself. Describe your recent day in one word, then expand it into a full reflective sentence. For example, I describe my day as balanced because I managed both work and personal time effectively. Reflection like this builds fluency beyond surface communication. Let's move into a relaxed evening conversation setting. Perhaps you're at home now, talking with family, or messaging a friend. Even casual conversations here can become rich language practice moments. Someone might ask, What do you usually do to relax after a long day? A simple reply, I watch TV. But let's build more texture. I usually watch something light because it helps me disconnect from stress. Or, I prefer listening to calm music, especially when I need mental relaxation. Take a moment now and describe your relaxation habits. I enjoy quiet time alone because it allows me to reflect on my thoughts. Or, spending time with family relaxes me more than anything else. These responses express emotional comfort sources. Now let's deepen the conversational layer further. Imagine discussing personal growth in the evening. Someone asks, Do you feel like you're improving yourself these days? A basic answer might be, Yes, I think so. But a more expressive reply could be, Yes, I've been making conscious efforts to improve my habits, especially my discipline and time management. Or, I feel like I'm growing mentally because I'm learning to handle challenges more calmly. This kind of introspective communication is a key to conversational strength. Pause here and think about your own self-improvement journey. Try forming a sentence that explains what you're working on internally. For example, I'm trying to become more patient because I've realized how important emotional control is. This is deeper conversational English, where thoughts become language. Now let's imagine the night is settling in. Conversations become slower, softer, and more reflective. Someone might ask, What was the best part of your day? You could answer simply, Finishing my work. But let's expand emotionally. The best part of my day was completing something I had been postponing. It gave me a sense of relief. Or, the best moment was a small conversation that made me smile unexpectedly. Notice how English conversations often value emotional highlights, not just major events. Now your turn. Reflect on a recent positive moment and describe why it mattered. For example, the best part of my day was having peaceful time alone because it helped me reset mentally. This kind of emotional articulation strengthens conversational relatability. As night approaches, conversations often turn toward rest, plans for tomorrow, and mental closure. Someone might ask, "Are you ready for tomorrow?" You might say, "I think so, but let's expand it. I feel prepared, but I know tomorrow will bring its own challenges." Or, "I'm trying to stay positive about tomorrow, even though I have a lot to handle." This expresses anticipation, mixed with realism. Now pause and think about how you usually feel before the next day begins. I like planning my next day at night because it gives me mental clarity. Or, I prefer not to overthink tomorrow. I just focus on rest. Both express mindset, not just planning. And as we close this daily conversational cycle, notice what you've practiced. You've moved through morning, midday, afternoon, evening, and night conversations, layering actions with feelings, reflections, and opinions. This is exactly how conversational fluency develops, not through memorizing isolated phrases, but through living language across real moments. And as we continue forward, we'll begin exploring more socially dynamic conversations, including friendships, opinions, disagreements, support, and deeper human connection, all through slow, guided English practice. As conversations begin to move beyond routines and daily structure, they naturally enter the space of human connection, and this is where English becomes more emotionally expressive, more responsive, and more socially dynamic. Because interacting with people is rarely predictable, and it requires you to react, adapt, and express thoughts in real time. Imagine you're meeting a friend after several days, maybe even weeks. The first exchange is usually warm, open, and emotionally inviting. They might say, "It feels like we haven't talked in so long. How have you been?" Now, at a basic level, you could answer, "I've been good, just busy." But let's expand the emotional honesty slightly. "I've been doing well overall, but the past few days have been quite demanding." Or, "I've been a little overwhelmed recently, but I'm managing things one step at a time." Notice how these responses allow vulnerability without sounding negative. This balance is very common in natural English conversation. Take a moment now and imagine meeting someone you trust. Try forming a response that reflects your genuine emotional state. For example, "I've been mentally busy, even more than physically busy," if that makes sense. This kind of phrasing, "if that makes sense," softens expression and invites empathy. As the conversation continues, people often begin sharing life updates. Someone might ask, "So, what's new in your life these days?" This question opens the door to narrative speaking, where you explain developments, changes, and personal progress. You might respond simply, "Nothing much, just the usual." But let's stretch that into richer storytelling. "I've been focusing more on improving myself lately, especially my daily habits and mindset." Or, "I recently started dedicating time to learning something new, and it's been both exciting and challenging." These responses add movement, growth, and direction. Pause now and think about something new or ongoing in your life. It doesn't have to be big. Even small shifts matter. You could say, I've been trying to create a more balanced routine because I realized how important mental health is. Or, I've been reconnecting with hobbies I ignored for years, and it feels refreshing. This kind of reflective sharing deepens conversations naturally. Now let's imagine your friend asks a more opinion-based question. Do you feel like you're in a good place in life right now? This question requires emotional awareness, not just vocabulary. A simple answer might be, yes, I think so. But let's expand thoughtfully. I feel like I'm in a transitional phase, still growing, but moving in the right direction. Or, I'm not exactly where I want to be yet, but I feel more clear about my path. Notice the use of phrases like transitional phase, moving in the right direction, clear about my path. These are B2 level expressions that communicate complex inner states. Take a breath now and reflect on your own answer. You might say, I feel stable, but I'm also pushing myself to evolve. Or, I feel uncertain sometimes, but motivated at the same time. This dual emotion expression is very natural in English. Now, conversations often shift toward shared memories, especially when reconnecting. Your friend might say, do you remember how stressed we used to get about small things? You could respond, yes, we overthought everything. But let's expand it reflectively. Yes, and looking back, those worries seem so minor compared to what we've learned since. Or, it's interesting how our perspective changes as we grow. This reflective comparative language, past versus present, is a strong conversational skill. Now pause and try forming your own memory reflection. For example, I used to fear challenges, but now I see them as opportunities to grow. This type of sentence expresses psychological development, not just experience. Let's shift into supportive conversations now. Imagine your friend shares a struggle. They say, I've been feeling mentally drained lately. Your response matters, because conversational fluency also includes empathy language. A simple reply, that's tough, but let's build a more supportive response. I'm really sorry you're feeling that way. Do you want to talk about what's been exhausting you? Or, I understand that feeling. Sometimes mental fatigue is harder than physical tiredness. Notice how these responses validate emotion rather than dismiss it. Now take a moment and imagine someone confiding in you. Try forming a supportive sentence. For example, you don't have to handle everything alone. I'm here if you need to talk. Supportive conversational language builds relational fluency, not just linguistic fluency. Now let's explore agreement and disagreement, another essential B2 skill. Imagine discussing lifestyle habits. Your friend says, I think working nonstop is the only way to succeed. You might agree partially. I understand that perspective, but I also believe rest is essential for long-term productivity. Or you might gently disagree. I see your point, but I feel balance matters more than constant pressure. Notice the softening phrases, I understand, I see your point. These maintain politeness while expressing contrast. Pause now and think of a belief you hold about work, study, or life balance. Try expressing it thoughtfully. For example, I believe consistency matters more than intensity. Or, I think mental well-being directly affects success. These opinion expressions add intellectual depth to conversation. Now let's move into future-oriented dialogue. Imagine your friend asks, "Where do you see yourself in the next few years?" This question requires imagination, planning, and aspiration vocabulary. A simple reply, "I want to be successful." But let's expand that vision. I see myself becoming more confident, both professionally and personally. Or, I hope to build a life where I feel fulfilled, not just busy. Notice how these answers focus on emotional success, not just material success. Take a moment now and visualize your future self. Try forming a sentence describing growth rather than achievement alone. For example, I want to become someone who handles challenges calmly. This kind of future reflection strengthens expressive fluency. As conversations wind down, people often transition into appreciation language. Your friend might say, "I'm really glad we had this conversation." You could respond simply, "Me too." But let's expand warmth. "I'm glad we talked. Conversations like this help me reset mentally." Or, "I appreciate moments where we can speak honestly." This appreciation vocabulary deepens relational connection. Now imagine closing the interaction. You might say, "Let's not wait so long before talking again." Or, "We should make time for conversations like this more often." These closing statements maintain emotional continuity. Take a breath now and reflect on what you've practiced in this conversational space. You explored reconnection, life updates, emotional sharing, supportive language, agreement, disagreement, future vision, and appreciation. This is socially intelligent English, where language becomes connection, not just communication. And as we continue moving forward, we'll begin entering situational conversations, including public interactions, service encounters, problem-solving dialogues, and real-world communication scenarios, all designed to stretch your conversational confidence even further. As conversations move beyond familiar people, they often enter the space of situational interactions, moments where you're speaking to someone you may not know personally, yet communication still needs to be clear, natural, and confident. These are everyday public life conversations, and they play a powerful role in building real-world English fluency because they require quick thinking, polite tone, and situational awareness. Imagine you're walking into a cafe or a small restaurant. The interaction may seem simple, but even ordering food contains multiple conversational layers. You might begin with, "Hi, I'd like to order something." That works, but let's expand it slightly into more natural phrasing. "Hi, I was wondering if I could get a coffee and something light to eat." Notice the softening phrase. "I was wondering if I could get." This sounds more polite and conversational, especially in service interactions. Now imagine the server asks, "Would you like that for here or takeaway?" You might respond, "For here, please." But you could also add natural conversational extension. "For here, I thought I'd sit for a while and relax." This small addition humanizes the interaction. Now pause and imagine placing your own order. Try forming a full sentence, not just the item. For example, "I'd like something refreshing, maybe a cold drink, because it's been a long day." This type of conversational ordering sounds much more fluent than simply listing items. Let's move the interaction forward. Imagine the server says, "It might take about 10 minutes. Is that okay?" You could say, "Yes, that's fine." But let's expand the response. "That's perfectly fine. I'm not in a hurry." Or, "No problem. I could use the time to relax anyway." These responses show comfort, not impatience. Now imagine there's a small issue. Perhaps the order arrives incorrectly. Situational conversations often test politeness under inconvenience. You might say, "This isn't what I ordered." Direct, but slightly sharp. Let's soften it. "Excuse me, I think there may have been a small mistake with my order." Or, "I'm sorry, but I believe I ordered something different." Notice how politeness language reduces tension. Take a moment now and imagine handling a small service issue calmly. You could say, "Would it be possible to change this?" This phrasing sounds cooperative, not confrontational. Now let's move into another public interaction, shopping conversations. Imagine you're inside a clothing store and you're speaking to an assistant. You might begin with, "I'm looking for a jacket," but let's expand it into descriptive searching language. "I'm looking for a jacket, something comfortable, but also suitable for formal occasions." Here, you're combining function and preference. The assistant might ask, "Do you have a specific color in mind?" You could say, "Not really. I'm open to suggestions." Or, "I usually prefer darker shades, but I'm willing to try something new." This expresses flexibility and identity simultaneously. Pause now and imagine shopping for something you need. Try describing it with both purpose and preference. For example, "I'm searching for something practical, but I'd also like it to look stylish." That balance between practicality and aesthetics is common in English shopping dialogue. Now imagine trying something on, and the assistant asks, "How does it fit?" You might say, "It fits well," but let's enrich that response. "It fits comfortably, but I think I might need a slightly larger size for ease of movement." Or, "I like the fit, though the sleeves feel a bit tight." These small, descriptive expansions signal higher conversational precision. Let's transition into travel-related situational dialogue. Imagine you're asking for directions, perhaps in a new area. You might say, "Where is the nearest station?" Clear, but we can soften it. "Excuse me, could you tell me where the nearest station is?" Or, "I'm a bit unfamiliar with this area. Would you mind guiding me to the nearest station?" Notice the humility phrasing. "I'm a bit unfamiliar." This invites helpfulness. Now imagine the person gives you complex directions. You could respond, "Thank you." But let's expand conversational acknowledgement. "Thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to explain that." Or, "That was really helpful. I feel much less lost now." This appreciation language strengthens interaction warmth. Pause now and imagine asking for directions somewhere. Try forming the full request politely. For example, "Could you help me find the nearest pharmacy? I'm not from around here." This adds context, not just a question. Now let's explore problem-solving public conversations. Imagine you're speaking to customer service, perhaps about a delayed delivery. You might begin, "My package is late." But let's refine that. I wanted to inquire about a delivery that seems to be delayed. Or, I was expecting a package today, but it hasn't arrived yet. This phrasing sounds calm and solution-focused. The representative might respond, "Let me check that for you." You could reply, "Thank you. I'd really appreciate that." Now imagine they explain the delay. You might say, "I understand. These things happen." Or, "Thanks for clarifying. I just wanted to be sure." This tone keeps the conversation constructive. Take a moment and imagine resolving a small issue politely. You could say, "As long as I know the updated delivery time, I'm okay with the delay." That expresses flexibility and understanding. Now let's move into appointment-based conversations. Imagine scheduling a meeting or consultation. You might say, "I'd like to book an appointment," but let's expand naturally. "I'd like to schedule an appointment, preferably sometime this week." Or, "I was hoping to book a consultation, if there's availability soon." Notice again the softening structure. "I was hoping to." This makes requests sound respectful. If the person offers a time that doesn't suit you, you might respond, "That time might be difficult for me. Would there be any later slots available?" This expresses limitation. Politely, pause now, and imagine negotiating a meeting time. You could say, "Mornings work better for me, as I'm more focused earlier in the day." This explains preference, logically. As we move through these situational dialogues, notice the patterns forming: politeness framing, descriptive language, emotional tone, and contextual explanation. This is what transforms functional English into socially effective English, because real-life conversations, especially with strangers, rely heavily on tone, respect, and clarity, not just vocabulary. And as you continue practicing these situational interactions, you begin feeling more comfortable speaking outside familiar circles, which is a major milestone on the journey from B1 to B2 fluency. From here, we'll begin stepping into more cognitively engaging conversations, including expressing opinions in group discussions, explaining personal viewpoints, and handling conversational disagreement in socially intelligent ways, all through slow, guided, real-life English practice. As conversations continue to expand beyond situational exchanges, they often enter environments where multiple voices are present: group discussions, shared decisions, and collaborative thinking. And this is where conversational English begins to require not just response, but participation. Because speaking in a group setting means expressing opinions, listening actively, agreeing, disagreeing, and building on ideas in real time. Imagine you're sitting with colleagues, classmates, or even friends, and a topic naturally comes up, perhaps about work culture, lifestyle habits, or modern technology. Someone begins the conversation by saying, "I feel like people are more stressed now than they were before." Now you're invited into the discussion. A basic response might be, "Yes, I agree." But at the B2 level, you begin expanding your agreement into reasoning. "I agree. I think modern life has become more fast-paced, and people rarely give themselves time to slow down." Or, "Yes, especially because expectations have increased, both professionally and socially." Notice how agreement becomes explanation. Pause now And imagine responding to that statement yourself. You might say, I agree to some extent, but I also think awareness about mental health has improved. This introduces partial agreement, which adds conversational nuance. Now imagine someone else in the group responds differently. I don't think stress has increased. I think people just talk about it more openly now. Here comes the opportunity for respectful disagreement. You could respond, that's an interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about it that way. Or, you make a valid point. Openness has definitely increased. Notice that disagreement doesn't always begin with contradiction. It often begins with acknowledgement. Now let's imagine you want to present your contrasting opinion. You might say, while I see your point, I still believe lifestyle demands today are heavier than before. Or, I understand the argument, but I feel technological dependence has added new stress factors. This balanced disagreement structure is essential in group discussions. Take a breath now and think about a topic you have an opinion on, perhaps social media, work-life balance, or education. Try expressing your opinion respectfully. For example, I believe social media connects people, but it can also create unrealistic expectations. That dual perspective structure is very common in B2 dialogue. Now let's move deeper into group conversational flow. Imagine someone asks the group, what do you think is the biggest distraction in modern life? You might respond, I think constant notifications are one of the biggest distractions because they interrupt deep focus. Or, for me, it's the pressure to multitask, which reduces efficiency rather than improving it. Notice how personal framing, for me, softens strong opinions. Pause now and reflect on your own distraction challenges. You could say, I find overthinking more distracting than external noise. Or, I get distracted when I try to do too many things at once. These responses combine introspection with discussion. Now imagine the group shifts toward solution-oriented dialogue. Someone asks, so how do you personally manage distractions? You might say, I try to create focused time blocks where I avoid interruptions. Or, I reduce distractions by limiting screen time during work hours. Let's expand that further. I've been training myself to stay present because I realized distraction often comes from mental clutter. This introduces psychological insight, not just technique. Now pause and describe your own focus strategy. For example, I manage distractions by prioritizing one task at a time instead of multitasking. That clarity of process strengthens communicative authority. Let's shift now into collaborative decision-making conversations. Imagine planning a group outing. Someone asks, where should we go this weekend? You might suggest, maybe somewhere quiet, like a nature spot, where we can relax. Or, we could try a new cafe, just to experience something different. Notice the use of maybe. We could. These make suggestions feel inclusive. Now imagine someone else proposes something different. How about going somewhere more lively, like a concert? You might respond, that sounds exciting, though I personally feel like relaxing this weekend. Or, I like the idea, but I think I need something calmer right now. This expresses preference without rejecting others. Pause now and imagine contributing to a group plan. You could say, I'm open. to anything, as long as we all get time to unwind. That inclusive phrasing supports group harmony. Now let's explore conversational interruption, a real-life challenge. In group discussions, you may need to enter the conversation respectfully. You might say, "Sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to add something." Or, "If I may, I'd like to share my perspective." This polite entry language is essential in collaborative dialogue. Now imagine someone interrupts you. You could respond calmly, "Go ahead, I'll continue after you." Or, "No problem, I was just finishing my point." Maintaining conversational flow, without frustration, is a social fluency skill. Now let's step into problem-solving discussions. Imagine a team facing a challenge. Someone asks, "How should we handle this situation?" You might say, "I think we should first analyze what caused the issue." Or, "It might help to divide responsibilities so we solve it faster." Let's expand further. We should approach this calmly because rushing decisions may create more complications. This adds strategic thinking language. Pause now and imagine suggesting a solution in a group. You could say, "Perhaps we should gather everyone's input before finalizing a decision." That collaborative tone strengthens group communication. Now, as discussions begin to conclude, group reflection often occurs. Someone might say, "I'm glad we talked this through." You could respond, "Yes, conversations like this help create clarity." Or, "I feel more confident now that we've shared perspectives." This reinforces conversational closure. Take a moment now and reflect on what you've practiced in this group dialogue space. You explored agreement, respectful disagreement, opinion framing, collaborative suggestions, conversational entry, interruption management, and solution-oriented speaking. These are essential skills that move English beyond one-on-one interaction into collective communication environments. And, as we continue forward, we'll begin exploring emotionally expressive storytelling, where you describe personal experiences, challenges, lessons, and transformative moments, all through slow, guided English narration designed to strengthen both fluency and emotional articulation. As conversations deepen even further, they often begin to move away from immediate surroundings and into personal storytelling, moments where you're not just exchanging information, but sharing experiences, memories, challenges, and lessons that have shaped you. This kind of expressive narration is a powerful step in moving from B1 toward B2 fluency because it requires emotional vocabulary, reflective structure, and descriptive flow. Imagine you're speaking with someone who asks you, "What's a challenge you faced that taught you something important?" At first, you might feel unsure how to answer, not because you lack experiences, but because putting life lessons into English requires thoughtful expression. A simple answer might be, "I had a difficult time in my studies." But let's expand that experience into reflective storytelling. "There was a period when I struggled academically, not because I lacked ability, but because I lacked discipline, and that realization changed my habits completely." Notice how the sentence doesn't just describe difficulty, it describes insight. Or, perhaps, "I once took on more responsibilities than I could handle, and it overwhelmed me, but it taught me the importance of balance." This storytelling style connects action, emotion, and learning. Pause now and think about a personal challenge that shaped your growth. Try expressing it not as a complaint, but as a lesson. For example, I faced a time when I doubted my progress, but it pushed me to become more consistent. This kind of reframing language shows emotional maturity. Now let's move deeper into the storytelling flow. Imagine continuing your narrative, explaining how you handled the challenge. You might say, "At first, I felt lost because I didn't know where to begin fixing things." Then you could add progression. But gradually, I started making small changes, and those small steps created big improvements. Notice the narrative movement: struggle, action, growth. This storytelling arc is common in B2 conversational sharing. Take a breath now and imagine narrating your own growth journey. You could say, "I didn't transform overnight, but consistency slowly reshaped my confidence." That sentence expresses gradual transformation. Now, let's explore emotional storytelling. Someone might ask, "Have you ever felt proud of yourself for overcoming something?" You might respond simply, "Yes, many times." But let's expand emotionally. "Yes, especially when I achieved something I once believed was beyond my ability." Or, "I felt proud when I realized I had grown stronger mentally than I used to be." Notice how pride is expressed through reflection, not boasting. Pause now and think about a moment of self-pride. You might say, "I felt proud when I stayed calm in a situation that would have stressed me before." This type of emotional articulation strengthens personal storytelling fluency. Now, storytelling often includes describing people who influenced you. Imagine someone asks, "Has anyone inspired your personal growth?" You could respond, "Yes, I've been inspired by people who remain calm under pressure." Or, "I admire individuals who prioritize kindness despite challenges." Let's deepen the narrative. One person influenced me deeply, not through advice, but through the way they handled adversity with grace. This adds admiration language. Pause now and reflect on someone who impacted your mindset. You might say, "I've learned resilience by observing how someone close to me handles setbacks." This reflective attribution is common in mature conversation. Now let's move into describing turning points. Someone might ask, "Was there a moment that changed your perspective on life?" You might say, "Yes, there was a time when failure taught me more than success ever did." Or, "A certain experience forced me to rethink my priorities completely." Notice the use of perspective shift vocabulary: rethinking priorities, changed perspective. Take a moment now and imagine describing a mindset shift. For example, "I used to fear uncertainty, but now I see it as space for growth." This transformation language reflects emotional intelligence. Now, storytelling also involves describing emotional struggles honestly. Imagine someone asks, "Have you ever felt lost about what direction to take in life?" You might respond, "Yes, there were moments when I felt uncertain about my future." But let's expand that reflection. "I felt lost, not because I lacked opportunities, but because I lacked clarity about what truly mattered to me." This type of layered introspection signals strong expressive fluency. Pause now and reflect on your own moments of uncertainty. You could say, "Confusion once made me anxious, but reflection eventually brought clarity." That sentence moves from chaos to resolution. Now, let's explore resilience storytelling. Someone might ask, what helped you stay strong during difficult times? You could answer, my inner determination kept me moving, even when progress felt slow. Or, support from loved ones reminded me that I wasn't alone. Let's expand that emotional resilience. I realized strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's simply continuing quietly. This poetic reflection is very powerful in advanced conversational storytelling. Pause now and form your own resilience statement. For example, I learned that patience can be stronger than urgency. This philosophical expression strengthens communicative depth. Now, storytelling often ends with present-day reflection. Someone might ask, looking back, would you change anything? You might say, I wouldn't change the challenges because they shaped who I am today. Or, I might adjust certain decisions, but I value the lessons they brought. This reflective closure shows acceptance, not regret. Take a breath now and imagine closing your own life story reflection. You could say, every experience, even the difficult ones, contributed to my growth. This kind of reflective summary builds emotional fluency. As you notice, storytelling English is slower, more thoughtful, and more layered than everyday conversation because it connects events with meaning. And by practicing storytelling, you train your mind not just to speak English, but to think, feel, and reflect in English. From here, we'll begin moving into emotionally supportive dialogues, conversations where you comfort others, encourage growth, and offer guidance, all of which require careful tone, empathetic vocabulary, and emotionally intelligent phrasing. As conversations continue evolving into deeper emotional territory, they begin to include moments where you're not only sharing your own experiences, but also responding to the emotions of others. This is where supportive dialogue becomes essential because real-life communication often requires comfort, reassurance, encouragement, and emotional presence. And expressing these feelings in English requires both vocabulary and sensitivity. Imagine someone close to you says, I've been feeling really unmotivated lately, like I'm not making progress in anything. At a basic level, you might respond, don't worry, you'll be fine. But while this sounds positive, it can feel dismissive because it doesn't acknowledge the person's feelings. So let's expand the supportive language. I'm really sorry you're feeling that way. Lack of motivation can feel mentally exhausting. Notice how this response validates emotion first, before offering reassurance. You could continue. Sometimes progress isn't visible immediately, but that doesn't mean you're not moving forward. This introduces perspective, without denying their struggle. Pause now and imagine someone confiding in you about feeling stuck. Try forming a supportive response that includes empathy. For example, I understand how discouraging that can feel, especially when you're putting in effort. This type of phrasing builds emotional connection. Now imagine the person says, I feel like everyone else is moving ahead, and I'm falling behind. This comparison anxiety is very common and requires careful reassurance. You might respond, it's easy to feel that way when you compare journeys, but everyone's timeline is different. Or, progress isn't always visible from the outside. Sometimes the biggest growth happens internally. These responses reframe perspective, without invalidating feeling. Take a breath now and imagine comforting someone dealing with self-doubt. You could say, "You're being harder on yourself than you deserve." This gentle confrontation encourages self-compassion. Now let's explore encouragement language. Imagine someone says, "I want to improve myself, but I keep losing consistency." A simple response might be, "Just try harder." But that lacks emotional understanding. Let's expand it. Consistency is difficult for everyone. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up even on low-energy days. Or, progress comes from small, repeated efforts, not sudden bursts of motivation. These statements offer guidance, not pressure. Pause now and imagine encouraging someone trying to build a habit. For example, even slow progress is still progress. This kind of affirmation reinforces patience. Now imagine someone sharing emotional fatigue. "I feel mentally drained, like I have nothing left to give." This requires deep empathy. You might say, "That sounds incredibly heavy." Mental exhaustion can be harder than physical tiredness. Or, maybe your mind is asking for rest, not pressure. Notice how supportive language often includes permission. Permission to rest, permission to slow down. Take a moment now and imagine responding to emotional burnout. You could say, "You've been carrying a lot. It's okay to pause." This phrasing normalizes emotional fatigue. Now let's explore reassurance during failure. Imagine someone says, "I tried, but I failed, and it makes me feel like I'm not capable." A dismissive reply might be, "Failure happens." But let's expand empathetically. Failure can feel discouraging, especially when you put your heart into something. Then add reframing. But failure often carries lessons success never teaches. Or, sometimes failure is feedback, not a final result. These responses transform perspective. Pause now and imagine supporting someone after disappointment. You might say, "This moment doesn't define your ability, it only reflects one experience." This separates identity from outcome. Now, supportive conversations often include reminding others of their strengths. Imagine someone says, "I don't think I'm strong enough to handle this." You could respond, "You're stronger than you realize. You've already handled situations you once thought impossible." Or, "Strength often reveals itself during challenges, not comfort." These responses reinforce self-belief. Take a breath now and imagine reminding someone of their resilience. For example, "You've grown more than you give yourself credit for." This acknowledgement builds confidence. Now, let's explore guidance-based support. Imagine someone asks, "What should I do? I feel confused about my next step." Instead of giving direct instructions, supportive English often offers perspective. You might say, "Sometimes clarity comes when you give yourself space, not pressure." Or, "You don't have to have everything figured out immediately." This guidance removes urgency. Pause now and imagine advising someone feeling directionless. You could say, "Take one step at a time. Clarity often follows action." This encourages movement without overwhelm. Now let's explore gratitude in supportive conversations. Imagine someone thanks you. "I really appreciate you listening to me." You might respond simply, "No problem." But let's expand emotional presence. "You never have to thank me for being there. I value our conversations." Or, I'm always here when you need someone to listen. These responses reinforce relational trust. Take a moment now and imagine responding to someone's gratitude warmly. For example, your trust means a lot to me. This strengthens emotional connection. Now, supportive dialogue often ends with hope. You might say, I truly believe things will feel lighter for you soon. Or, you're moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Hope language balances realism with optimism. Pause now and imagine offering hope to someone struggling. You could say, storms don't last forever. Clarity follows them. This metaphorical reassurance is common in emotional conversation. As you reflect on what you've practiced, notice how supportive English focuses on empathy, validation, reframing, encouragement, and hope, rather than instruction alone, because emotional conversations are less about solutions and more about presence, understanding, and compassionate expression. And as we continue moving forward, we'll begin exploring persuasive communication, expressing personal viewpoints, influencing decisions, and articulating beliefs in a confident yet respectful manner, all through slow, guided, real-life English conversation practice. As conversations grow more confident and emotionally aware, they naturally begin to include persuasion, the ability to express what you believe, explain why you believe it, and communicate your viewpoint in a way that feels respectful, thoughtful, and influential. Persuasive communication at the B2 level isn't about arguing loudly. It's about presenting ideas clearly, supporting them with reasoning, and remaining open to dialogue. Imagine you're discussing lifestyle choices with someone. Perhaps the topic of daily habits comes up. The other person says, I don't think routines are important. I prefer living spontaneously. Now, you have an opportunity to present your perspective. A basic response might be, I think routines are important. But let's expand that thought. I understand the appeal of spontaneity, but I believe routines create stability, especially during stressful periods. Notice how the response begins with acknowledgement, then introduces reasoning. Or you might say, for me, routines provide mental clarity because they reduce decision fatigue. This introduces psychological justification. Pause now and think about your own belief regarding routines. Try expressing it with reasoning. For example, I feel routines protect my productivity, even when motivation fluctuates. This kind of structured persuasion feels balanced, not forceful. Now imagine the conversation shifts toward health habits. Someone says, I don't see the need to exercise regularly. Life is already busy. You could respond simply, exercise is important. But let's deepen the persuasion. I agree that life is busy, but regular exercise actually increases energy rather than draining it. Or, even small physical activity can improve mental well-being, not just physical health. Notice how persuasive language often reframes effort as benefit. Take a moment now and imagine encouraging someone to adopt a healthy habit. You might say, investing time in health now prevents complications later. This future-oriented persuasion is common in lifestyle discussions. Now let's explore professional persuasion. Imagine you're suggesting an idea at work or in a study group. You say, I think we should approach this project differently. But to sound more convincing, you expand. I think we should approach this project differently because our current method is slowing progress. Or, adopting a new strategy might improve efficiency, especially if we divide tasks based on strengths. Here, persuasion is supported by logic, not just opinion. Pause now and imagine proposing an improvement in a team setting. You could say, I believe restructuring the workflow could reduce unnecessary pressure. This introduces solution-oriented persuasion. Now imagine someone challenges your idea. I'm not sure that would work. This is where calm persuasion matters. You might respond, that's a fair concern. Perhaps we could test the approach on a smaller scale first. Or, I understand the hesitation, but exploring alternatives may reveal better outcomes. Notice how persuasion includes flexibility, not rigidity. Take a breath now and imagine defending your idea respectfully. For example, I'm open to adjustments, but I feel the core idea still holds value. This communicates confidence without stubbornness. Now let's explore value-based persuasion. Imagine discussing work-life balance. Someone says, success requires sacrificing personal time completely. You might respond, I see why that belief exists, but I feel sustainable success requires balance. Or, burnout reduces long-term productivity, so personal time becomes an investment, not a loss. This reframes sacrifice into sustainability. Pause now and think about your perspective on balance. You could say, I believe rest strengthens performance rather than weakening it. This kind of value articulation strengthens conversational authority. Now let's move into persuasion in friendships. Imagine convincing a friend to try something new. You might say, I know you're hesitant, but trying it once might surprise you. Or, you don't have to commit long-term, just experience it once. Notice how persuasive language reduces pressure. Take a moment now and imagine encouraging someone to step outside their comfort zone. You could say, growth often begins where comfort ends. This philosophical persuasion adds emotional motivation. Now let's explore self-persuasion, the way you speak to yourself. Because internal dialogue shapes external communication, you might say to yourself, I may not feel ready, but starting is better than waiting. Or, confidence grows through action, not perfection. This reflective persuasion builds internal resilience. Pause now and imagine motivating yourself during hesitation. For example, progress matters more than flawless execution. This reframing reduces fear. Now, persuasive conversations often include storytelling as evidence. Imagine you're convincing someone about patience. You might say, I once rushed a process, and it led to mistakes. Patience would have saved time. Or, whenever I've trusted gradual progress, outcomes felt more stable. Story-backed persuasion feels relatable. Take a breath now and imagine supporting your viewpoint with personal experience. You could say, I learned through experience that consistency outweighs intensity. This blends storytelling with persuasion. Now let's explore respectful persuasion closure. After presenting your viewpoint, you might say, of course, that's just my perspective. I'm open to hearing yours. Or, I could be wrong, but that's how I interpret the situation. This openness maintains dialogue harmony. As you reflect on this conversational space, Notice how persuasion involves reasoning, empathy, storytelling, and flexibility, rather than dominance. Because effective communication isn't about winning discussions, it's about exchanging perspectives meaningfully. And as we continue forward, we'll begin exploring reflective life conversations where you discuss purpose, happiness, fulfillment, and personal meaning, all through slow, guided English expression designed to deepen both language fluency and self-awareness. As conversations mature even further, they often begin to move into reflective territory, discussions that are less about events and more about meaning, purpose, fulfillment, and the deeper questions people quietly carry within themselves. These conversations are slower, more thoughtful, and emotionally layered, and expressing such reflections in English requires calm pacing, introspective vocabulary, and honest articulation. Imagine you're speaking with someone during a quiet evening moment, perhaps after a long day, and they ask you, "Do you feel happy with where you are in life right now?" This question doesn't invite a quick response. It invites reflection. A simple answer might be, "Yes, I'm happy." But let's expand the emotional nuance. "I feel content in many ways, though I still have aspirations I'm working toward." Or, "I feel peaceful internally, even if my external life is still evolving." Notice how happiness is expressed in layers, not absolutes. Pause now and reflect on your own emotional state. Try forming a response that balances gratitude and ambition. For example, "I feel grateful for my progress, but motivated to grow further." This dual emotion structure is very natural in reflective conversation. Now imagine the discussion deepens. Someone asks, "What do you think gives life real meaning?" This question invites philosophical expression. You might respond, "I believe meaning comes from connection, the relationships we nurture, and the impact we leave." Or, "For me, meaning comes from growth, becoming a better version of myself over time." Notice how meaning is often tied to values, not possessions. Take a breath now and think about what gives your life meaning. You could say, "I find meaning in learning because it continuously expands my perspective." Or, "Helping others grow gives me a sense of purpose." These value-centered expressions strengthen conversational depth. Now let's explore fulfillment versus success, a common reflective topic. Someone might ask, "Do you think success automatically leads to happiness?" You might respond, "Not necessarily. Success without fulfillment can still feel empty." Or, "I think happiness depends more on inner peace than external achievement." This distinguishes emotional success from material success. Pause now and reflect on your perspective. You could say, "True success, to me, is living in alignment with my values." This kind of phrasing signals mature introspection. Now, reflective conversations often include discussing life pace. Someone might say, "Do you ever feel like life is moving too fast?" You could respond, "Yes, sometimes it feels like time is passing faster than I can process." Or, "I think modern life accelerates everything, leaving little space for reflection." Let's deepen that thought. That's why I try to slow down intentionally, even if only for a few quiet moments each day. This introduces mindful living vocabulary. Pause now and describe your relationship with time. For example, I try to appreciate small moments so life doesn't feel rushed. This reflective pacing language builds emotional fluency. Now, let's explore purpose-oriented dialogue. Someone might ask, "Do you feel like you've found your purpose yet?" You might respond, "I feel like I'm still discovering it, piece by piece." Or, "I believe purpose evolves as we grow. It's not fixed." Notice how uncertainty is expressed calmly, not anxiously. Take a moment now and reflect on your sense of direction. You could say, "I may not have complete clarity, but I feel aligned with my path." This expresses grounded progress. Now, reflective dialogue often includes discussing personal values. Someone might ask, "What matters most to you in life?" You might respond, "Inner peace matters deeply to me, more than external validation." Or, "Authenticity matters, being true to myself and others." Let's expand value expression. "I value growth, not perfection, because growth allows evolution." Pause now and reflect on your core values. For example, "I value emotional stability because it shapes every area of life." This articulation strengthens identity expression. Now, let's explore reflective regret and acceptance. Someone might ask, "Do you regret anything from your past?" You could respond, "I regret certain decisions, but I value the lessons they taught me." Or, "I try not to hold regret because every experience shaped my awareness." This reframes regret into learning. Pause now and reflect on your relationship with past mistakes. You could say, "I see my past not as error, but as education." This transformation language reflects emotional maturity. Now, reflective conversations often move toward gratitude. Someone might ask, "What are you most grateful for right now?" You might say, "I'm grateful for mental clarity. It makes life feel lighter." Or, "I'm grateful for the people who support my journey." Let's expand gratitude reflection. "I've learned to appreciate stability because it's often overlooked." Pause now and express something you're thankful for. For example, "I'm grateful for growth, even when it came through difficulty." This gratitude articulation builds emotional richness. Now, reflective dialogue often concludes with perspective statements. You might say, "Life feels less about reaching destinations and more about understanding the journey." Or, "I've realized peace often comes from acceptance, not control." These closing reflections summarize inner awareness. As you observe this conversational space, notice how reflective English is slower, softer, and more contemplative because it expresses inner landscapes, not external actions. And by practicing this kind of dialogue, you strengthen not only your language, but your ability to think, process, and articulate meaning in English. From here, we'll begin transitioning into future-oriented vision conversations, where you describe dreams, long-term aspirations, imagined lifestyles, and the emotional motivations behind them, continuing to build fluency through thoughtful, guided expression. As conversations gently move from reflection about the present, they often begin expanding toward the future, into visions, aspirations, dreams, and the quiet images people hold about the life they hope to create. Future-oriented dialogue is an important step in conversational fluency because it requires imagination, emotional motivation, planning vocabulary, and the Ability to describe possibilities that haven't yet happened. Imagine you're sitting with someone during a calm conversation, and they ask you, "What kind of life do you see yourself living in the future?" This question invites you to project your inner vision outward. A simple answer might be, "I want a good life." But let's expand that vision into descriptive expression. I see myself living a balanced life, where I feel mentally peaceful, while also growing professionally. Or, I imagine a future where I'm not constantly rushed, where I have time to enjoy small moments. Notice how the vision includes emotional atmosphere, not just material success. Pause now and picture your future environment. Try describing not what you own, but how you feel living there. For example, I see myself living in a calm space, surrounded by simplicity rather than chaos. This type of imagery strengthens expressive fluency. Now imagine someone asks you, "What motivates you to keep working toward your goals?" You might respond, "My motivation comes from wanting a life that feels meaningful, not just busy." Or, "I'm driven by the desire to become someone I'm proud of." Let's deepen that motivation reflection. I think my biggest motivation is growth, the feeling that I'm evolving continuously. Pause now and reflect on your personal driving force. You could say, "I'm motivated by the idea of creating stability for my future." This kind of future security language is very common in B2 dialogue. Now, future conversations often include discussing dreams. Someone might ask, "Is there something you've always dreamed of doing?" You might respond, "Yes, I've always dreamed of achieving a level of freedom where I control my time." Or, "I've dreamed of building something meaningful that impacts others positively." Notice how dreams often connect to autonomy, impact, and fulfillment. Take a breath now and imagine expressing your own dream. For example, I've always dreamed of living a life guided by passion rather than pressure. This dream articulation adds emotional resonance. Now let's explore fear within future vision, because aspirations often carry uncertainty. Someone might ask, "Do you ever feel afraid about the future?" You might answer, "Yes, uncertainty can feel intimidating at times." But let's expand that honesty. I feel afraid sometimes, not of failure, but of not reaching my potential. Or, the unknown can feel overwhelming, but it also feels full of possibility. This dual emotion framing reflects mature future awareness. Pause now and reflect on your own relationship with uncertainty. You could say, "I fear stagnation more than change." This kind of expression shows psychological clarity. Now, future dialogue often includes lifestyle imagination. Someone might ask, "How do you want your daily life to feel in the future?" You might respond, "I want my days to feel purposeful rather than repetitive." Or, "I hope my future routine includes both productivity and peace." Let's expand that vision further. I want my work to energize me, not drain me. Pause now and imagine your ideal daily rhythm. For example, I see myself living slower, but more intentionally. This mindful future framing strengthens expressive range. Now let's explore success imagery. Someone might ask, "How would you define success for your future self?" You might respond, "I would define success as emotional stability combined with meaningful achievement." Or, "To me, success means waking up without anxiety about the day ahead." Notice how emotional security becomes part of success definition. Pause now and define success in your own words. You could say, success, for me, is freedom of mind. This abstract expression reflects B2 philosophical fluency. Now, future conversations often include contribution. Someone might ask, how do you want to impact others in your future? You might respond, I want to inspire people through my journey, especially those who doubt themselves. Or, I hope my growth encourages others to pursue their own. Let's deepen that contribution reflection. I want my presence to create positivity, even in small ways. Pause now and reflect on the impact you want to leave. For example, I want to be remembered for kindness, not just accomplishment. This type of legacy language strengthens emotional articulation. Now, future dialogue often includes adaptability. Someone might ask, what if life doesn't go exactly as you planned? You could respond, I've learned that flexibility is as important as ambition. Or, I believe unexpected paths sometimes lead to better destinations. This adaptive mindset language reflects psychological maturity. Pause now and reflect on your openness to life changes. You might say, I try to trust life's timing, even when it differs from my own. This acceptance expression deepens conversational calmness. Now, as future conversations begin to close, people often summarize hope. You might say, more than anything, I hope my future self feels peaceful. Or, I hope I become someone who handles life with grace. These closing aspirations reflect emotional evolution. As you observe this conversational space, notice how future-oriented dialogue blends imagination, ambition, fear, hope, and purpose. Because talking about the future isn't just about plans, it's about identity, who you're becoming, and why you're moving forward. And as we continue toward the final stretch of this masterclass, we'll begin integrating everything you've practiced: daily conversations, social dialogue, storytelling, support, persuasion, reflection, and future vision into extended natural conversation flow, allowing you to experience how all these layers merge into real-life English fluency. As all these conversational layers begin to come together, daily routines, social interaction, storytelling, emotional support, persuasion, reflection, and future vision, something very important starts to happen inside your communication style. You stop thinking of English as separate pieces and begin experiencing it as one continuous flow, a living conversation that adapts depending on the moment, the person, and the emotion behind the words. Imagine now that you're having a long conversation with someone close to you, perhaps during a late evening walk or a quiet cafe meeting. This conversation doesn't stay within one topic. It moves naturally, just like real life does. It might begin casually. You say, it's been a long day, but I feel strangely satisfied. The other person asks, what made it satisfying? And you respond, I think it's because I handled situations more calmly than I used to. Notice how this single sentence carries reflection, growth, and emotional awareness. The conversation then shifts slightly. They ask, do you feel like you've changed a lot over the past few years? You pause, reflect, and answer. Yes, I think my mindset has evolved more than my circumstances. Or, I've become less reactive and more observant of my thoughts. This shows psychological development, not just life events. Take a moment now and imagine describing your personal growth in one reflective sentence. For example, I've learned to respond rather than react. This type of insight-driven communication reflects B2 maturity. Now the conversation flows into future perspective. They ask, "Do you feel hopeful about what's ahead?" You respond thoughtfully, "Yes," not because I know what will happen, but because I trust my ability to handle it. Or, "I feel hopeful because uncertainty no longer scares me the way it used to." This blends confidence with acceptance. Pause now and form your own hope-centered reflection. You could say, "I feel hopeful because I've survived moments I once feared." That sentence connects past resilience with future confidence. Now imagine the conversation deepens emotionally. They say, "What do you think matters most at the end of the day?" You reflect before answering. "I think inner peace matters most, the feeling that you lived the day honestly." Or, "I believe meaningful connections matter more than achievements." This value-centered reflection strengthens emotional articulation. Take a breath and answer that question for yourself. For example, "For me, growth matters most, knowing I'm not standing still." Now the dialogue softens further, moving toward life philosophy. They ask, "Do you think people ever fully figure life out?" You smile slightly and respond, "I don't think life is something to be figured out completely. I think it's something to be experienced." Or, "I think clarity comes in moments, not permanently." This abstract reflection shows comfort with uncertainty. Pause now and express your own life philosophy. You could say, "I think life teaches in chapters, not conclusions." This metaphorical language deepens conversational elegance. Now imagine the conversation returns gently to the present moment. They say, "Despite everything, do you feel grateful today?" You answer softly, "Yes, I feel grateful for growth, even when it came through difficulty." Or, "I feel grateful for awareness. It makes life feel more intentional." Gratitude reflection often closes deep conversations. Take a moment and express something you're grateful for right now. For example, "I'm grateful for progress, even if it's slow." Now, as the conversation begins to wind down, emotional closure emerges. You might say, "I appreciate conversations like this. They bring clarity to thoughts I don't always express." Or, "These moments remind me how important reflection is." This kind of closing dialogue reinforces connection. Pause now and imagine ending a meaningful conversation. You could say, "Let's keep having conversations that make us think deeply." This leaves emotional continuity. As you reflect on this extended conversational flow, notice how all the skills you've practiced merge naturally. You moved from daily life into emotional sharing, into perspective, into philosophy, and back into gratitude without forcing transitions. This is what real conversational fluency feels like. Not structured, not memorized, but alive, responsive, and emotionally aware. And as we approach the closing stretch of this masterclass, we'll begin gently consolidating everything you've practiced, reinforcing your confidence, your expressive range, and your ability to sustain meaningful English conversations across any life situation. As this long conversational journey begins to settle into its final stretch, it becomes important to pause, not to stop practicing, but to notice how far your communication has already traveled. Because fluency doesn't arrive suddenly, it forms quietly through moments of listening, reflecting, speaking, and gradually feeling more at ease inside the language. Imagine, now that you're sitting in a calm space, perhaps alone after a long day, or quietly observing your surroundings, and you begin having a gentle internal conversation with yourself. This is one of the most powerful stages of language growth. When English begins to exist not only in dialogue with others, but also in your inner reflection, you might think, "Today felt different. I handled situations with more patience than before." Or, "I noticed how my reactions have softened, even in stressful moments." This kind of self-observation language strengthens internal fluency because you're no longer translating thoughts, you're expressing them directly. Pause for a moment now and imagine reflecting on your own day in English. You could say, "I'm proud of how I remained calm, even when things became complicated." This self-acknowledgement builds emotional confidence. Now your thoughts might drift toward progress. You reflect. "I may not be where I want to be yet, but I'm definitely not where I used to be." Or, "My growth feels slow sometimes, but it feels steady." Notice how these reflections balance honesty with encouragement. Take a breath now and express your own sense of progress. For example, "I can feel my confidence building, even in small ways." This recognition reinforces motivation. Now imagine thinking about the conversations you've had recently. You might say to yourself, "I've started expressing my thoughts more clearly, without overthinking every word." Or, "I feel more comfortable staying in conversations rather than withdrawing." These internal observations signal conversational maturity. Pause now and reflect on your conversational comfort. You could say, "I no longer fear silence. I use it to think." That statement reflects growing communicative calmness. Now your reflection may move toward emotional awareness. You think, "I've become more understanding of others' feelings, not just my own." Or, "I listen more deeply now, instead of waiting to respond." This shows relational growth, not just linguistic growth. Take a moment and express how your listening has evolved. For example, "I've realized listening is as powerful as speaking." Now imagine your thoughts shifting toward future communication. You reflect, "I want to keep improving, not for perfection, but for connection." Or, "I want my words to reflect clarity, not confusion." This intention-based language strengthens direction. Pause now and form your own communication intention. You could say, "I want my voice to carry calmness, not hesitation." Now, as your inner dialogue continues, you may revisit challenges you once feared. You think, "There were times when speaking felt intimidating, but I moved through them." Or, "I once doubted my ability to express myself, but practice changed that." These reflections transform past fear into present strength. Take a breath now and acknowledge a fear you've overcome. For example, "I used to fear making mistakes, but now I see them as learning steps." Now your reflection softens into gratitude. You think, "I'm grateful for every opportunity that allowed me to practice." Or, "I appreciate the patience I've developed with myself." Gratitude reflection stabilizes motivation. Pause now and express something you're thankful for in your learning journey. You could say, I'm grateful I didn't give up when progress felt slow. Now imagine closing this quiet inner conversation. You reflect gently. I'll continue growing, one conversation at a time. Or, I trust the process, even when I can't see the results immediately. These closing affirmations strengthen long-term fluency confidence. As you sit with these reflections, notice how English now feels less like a subject and more like a companion, present in your thoughts, your observations, your emotional understanding, and your future aspirations. Because true conversational fluency isn't measured by how many words you know, but by how naturally you can live, think, feel, and connect through the language. And the more you continue engaging in conversations like these, slow, reflective, expressive, and real, the more English becomes not something you practice, but something you inhabit, naturally, comfortably, and confidently. Thank you for staying with me throughout this entire conversation practice session. I truly hope this time we spent together helped you feel more comfortable, more expressive, and more connected to your English speaking journey. Remember, fluency isn't built in a single day. It grows slowly, through listening, reflecting, practicing, and allowing yourself to speak without fear of imperfection. Every sentence you form, every thought you express, and every moment you stay present in English is a step forward. As you move ahead, try to carry these conversational patterns into your daily life. Speak about your routines, your feelings, your opinions, your dreams, and even your quiet reflections, because the more you live through the language, the more natural it becomes. Be patient with your progress. Be kind to your mistakes. And most importantly, keep showing up for your practice, because consistency always creates transformation. I'm really glad you chose to spend this time learning with me, and I look forward to continuing this journey together in many more conversations to come.